In a landmark ruling today, the Supreme Court has declared electoral bonds scheme unconstitutional, citing it as a violation of citizens' right to information. Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud has stated, and I quote, that the scheme is arbitrary and may lead to a quid pro quo arrangement between political parties and donors. The court's 5-judge bench unanimously held that the scheme's objectives of combating black money and maintaining donor confidentiality are insufficient justifications. Instead, they emphasize that electoral bonds are not the sole method to address the issue of black money in politics. Chief Justice of India ordered the immediate cessation of electoral bonds issuance by the State Bank of India and directed the bank to disclose donation details made through this mechanism to the Election Commission. The Election Commission was instructed to publish this information on its website. By the 13th of March, CJI clarified that while there are two separate opinions, both concur on the same conclusion, albeit with slight differences in reasoning. Now, remember, the scheme was introduced in 2018, aimed to eliminate black money from political funding. Former Finance Minister Arun, Jaitley, an eminent jurist in his own right, had highlighted the opacity of traditional cash donations and emphasized the need for a more transparent system. He argued that while disclosing donors' identities would deter them from reverting to cash donations. Well, what is the implication of this judgment is the big question. Joining us at this point is Ashwini Dubey, senior lawyer. We also have Deshat Nigam, political analyst, joining us live. Manasvi Thapar, political analyst, also joins us live. Let me begin with you first, Ashwini, on what you make of the Supreme Court judgment today and what the ramifications will be.
Thank you, Uday, for having me here. Ramifications are that those political parties which have already purchased the electoral bond and submitted to the political parties, that those donors, that will not allowed to be used. Second is that when Supreme Court says that, look, it is violative to the principle of the fundamental rights of an individual to right to know under Article 19(1)(a) and also Right to Information Act. Then in that situation, and suppose the donor's name and list comes into the picture and payment has been given higher to the political party in power and less to the position. So tomorrow, the principle of quid pro quo, which is being discussed, that will come in the play, and it's a election time. So definitely the party in power who has got the maximum donations will be questioned, not only by the politicians, but also by the public at large. Third is the electoral process is fulcrum of democracy. In democracy, the public accepts that public should know about the system, how political parties work, what money they are getting, from which they are getting, and are those political parties are amenable to the public at large or through some corporates. Because here, transparency was there, but that transparency was not absolute. That was only limited that you will go to the State Bank of India's 29 marked banks, you will pay money, you will get the electoral bond, come back, but you will not, that your information, that for how much amount you have received and how much money you are paying to the political party is not known. So by citing the right to privacy, by saying that you are not within the ambit of Right to Information Act, not giving the information. That is why the Honorable Supreme Court says the electoral bond scheme is violative of Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. Second, the Companies Act permitting unlimited corporate contributions to political parties. Why, Uday? The contributions which are being made to the political parties, and that is then you are getting the tax benefits. That is arbitrary and violative to Article 14. And therefore, the Honorable Supreme Court said that disclosure of information on contribution received by political parties under the electoral bond scheme to give logical and complete effect says that it should come in the public domain. And it is not the challenge on one front. The RBI has also raised the questions. The Election Commission of India has also raised the question. And that too, when we talk that the electoral process should be fair, impartial, transparent, and also that criminal antecedents are being published, and those political parties should also be felt that winnability is not the criteria. Is there any person who does not have any criminal background, is not available in that political party, he should be given ticket. And that point of time, non-disclosure amounts to violations, not only the Representation of People Act, but also the citizens' right to know, and also under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution of India. Yes, over to you.
Yes, let me take that across to Deshatanigam. Deshatanigam, now, there is the big question, of course, of, the anonymity of donors. Now, that is very important as well. However, it is very important, as the Supreme Court has ruled, to maintain transparency. How are we going to draw a fine line between the two going forward, Deshatanigam? And what are your interpretations of the observations made today while giving this judgment?
Uday, in fact, Ashwini has given the legal position, and as a lawyer, let me tell you that they are absolutely on the point. But the fact remains, we had a system where there was cash donations, and then we had a system which was better than that, which was through that bond scheme. A similar scheme was brought in by the Congress as Electoral Fund Trust by Pranab Mukherjee when he was the finance minister. Subsequently, Mr. Jaitley got this scheme in 2018. Now, if you compare the two systems, the one which existed prior to this bond scheme and the bond scheme is certainly far better than the previous scheme, where the cash donations used to take place. So where have we gone now? We have reverted back to the old system, where a lot of black money, cash money will be used under the system, and all political parties across the spectrum will be funded. So Supreme Court should have read the transparency clause that they have the right to information without striking down this particular scheme. Now what will happen? You go back to the old system with a lot of cash and black money will start floating around, and then probably you will find some kind of an intervention by the government again. So another option which the government today has is to pass an ordinance based on this particular observation and judgment by the Supreme Court to bring up a new law, because an unregulated electoral funding system is going to create a lot of anarchy, lot of quid pro quo, more quid pro quo than the scheme which the court was talking about. So in my opinion, the central government must intervene in the system and bring a law, keeping in mind the observation of the Supreme Court and also bringing in more transparency. Supreme Court did not say that the system is not transparent. They said there are other ways of bringing in transparency and dealing with the black money without suggesting anything. I thought there would be some suggestions coming from the court. What could be other possible alternatives? Striking it down in a manner when the election is near will give rise to a lot of black money floating around. That, in my opinion, will probably impel the government to bring in some law in view of the observations made by the Supreme Court.
All right, let me in fact take that to Manasvi Thapar as well. Manasvi Thapar, now the fact of course is that there were many arguments made against electoral bonds in favor during the course of the hearing. The Supreme Court has decided what it has today. What is your interpretation of the judgment, and what is the way forward now for funding, Manasvi? How is it going to go about?
See, in any democratic setup like India, when we are the largest and the greatest democracy and the mother of the democracy of all the worlds, this kind of process had to go. And it's a welcome step, and every citizen of this country is very happy about this step. There cannot be opaqueness of funding. There has to be quid pro quo establishment. And with this coming out, it will be established very soon right now with the March deadline given to the Election Commission that whoever funded, you should bring it out on record. So now, see, no political party is in any business. They don't have any source of funding, but the corporates fund them. So which corporates are funding them? Why are they funding them? What is the outcome of that funding? This is something the common citizen of our country should know, that you are funding a political party. It could be out of the ideological benefits you want to get it. You like a person, you like a political leader, you're funding it. And in future, they get some benefit out of it. That also the people of this country should know. So that is what the Supreme Court's crux is all about. So why did that opaqueness was there? So that opaqueness had to be reduced. Completely transparent should be there. We should not worry about the funding of the political parties. So earlier, I would say that there was a retail corruption. Yes, there was black money. Now with the electoral bonds, there was a wholesale corruption. So we didn't know who was funding whom, what was happening there, and what was the benefits they were getting after the election. So that is something which will not be there in this election. It's a great welcome step. Anyone who loves democracy, anyone who's in favor of democracy should be in the favor of the process of funding also. Because we cannot have opaque funding and we could praise that the election was fair. How can the election be fair when someone is getting 100 rupees and another is getting only 1 rupee? And there is no record of that 100 rupees coming or 1 rupees coming from whom, where. Because political parties are not in business. BJP is not in business of doing business. Congress is not in business of doing business. They depend completely on the funding of corporates, their well-wishers, their karyakartas. There is where funding is coming from. And now, as a citizen of this great nation, the largest democracy of the world, if a karyakarta is funding something, is he getting any benefit when the political party comes into power? Is a corporate funding right now, is he getting any benefit when the political party comes in power after 6 months, 3 months? That is something where the citizens of 140 crore Indians should know that yes, he funded, he got a benefit. Yes, he funded, he did not get any benefit. The government is working on merits. That's how transparency, trust in democracy is established. If we want to have a robust democracy, we should have a robust, transparent funding method. A government like the present government with such kind of mandate, are we saying are incapable to create a transparent way of funding policy? No. There has to be the will. There has to be the way. We cannot. There is a will when we tax our tax holders. There is a way when we create all kinds of rates. Why can't there be a way when we create a political funding transparent way? Yes, you fund as much as you want to. Why hide and fund? What is the motive to hide and fund? Why are you scared of that? There should not be any scary thing out of it. You should be happy you are funding. If I am funding I should be loud and less. I'm funding, not going to take any action against. It is okay to fund. There are donors all across. हम राम मंदिर में फंड करते, भगवान कृष्ण थोड़ी हमारे पे बुरा मान जाएंगे कि यार हम आप पे अटैक करेंगे. नहीं, ठीक है, फंड करो. It is okay. I think it is only when the mind was on the wrong side of it. It was only the Supreme Court which came into the way in 2024, and finally after 6 years a pathway has been opened up. There is no denial that without funding elections can be fought. You need funding. Political parties need funding, but the route has to be pure. The ideology of funding has to be correct. You get your funding from the correct routes established. What was happening earlier was, right now my friend Deshratan ji said that this will open up gates for black money and corruption. It was already there. It was still there also. Now what was happening with this also, the black money and corruption was also there. Existing to that, a large corporate fund was also coming to political parties. And that is something which will evade right now. Now fair play would happen, and you are funding XYZ, you fund XYZ as much as you want to fund, but disclose it. What is the problem in disclosing it? You should be happy you are funding it. That ownership of funding should also come. पैसा मत दो, नाम भी दो अपने पैसे को कि हमने फंड किया है और हमने नाम दिया है.
Yes, Deshratan wants to respond to you. Go ahead.
Well, let me tell you one thing. The Supreme Court dealt with the past, with the bond scheme and whatever was received after the interim order, that is need to be disclosed. What about the present and future? There is no law existing today to regulate that. The field of election funding remains unregulated as of now. That is my biggest worry. Earlier, there was no accountability. The cash would come to the party, and whether quid pro quo has taken place, whether cash has come, nobody would know. Here at least, one would know through, because there are electoral bonds, that record is kept both with the income tax authorities for audit purposes and everything. If the Supreme Court wanted, it can take it, which they've already asked. But what about future donations? How would it be regulated? And under what scheme it would be regulated? Then the previous system of electoral funding would come into picture. No. Suppose a decision has been taken by a government, any government, favoring somebody. You would not even know whether there was a quid pro quo or not, whether there was cash transactions or not, because there is no trail of cash. So that is what I am saying. Today the field is unregulated. Probably the government will come into the picture, will draft a law, make a law through ordinance, because this field cannot be left unregulated. Make it more transparent, because election funding is a must in democracy. Everybody, all the political parties, incur expenditure. Nobody denies electoral funding. How it is to be done, the government of India needs to apply its mind because in my opinion, it cannot be left unregulated as it was in prior to this bond scheme.
Okay, let me in fact take that back across to Ashwini as well. Ashwini, now what happens next? The order has of course come. Do we expect to go back to cash donations? Do we believe that there will be some new system devised? What happens next? There is a Lok Sabha election that is fast approaching.
See, there is, if government wants to bring a transparent system, then government may bring it either through the ordinance or through the legislation. But so far, bringing legislation on this aspect is concerned is not possible, because somehow the election is going to be announced, and there is no, in future, there is no the Lok Sabha session or Rajya Sabha session which is going to happen. The moot question is the integrity of the election process. And integrity of election process is pivotal for sustaining the democratic form of government. Why Supreme Court says that? Look, that very rightly my respected elder brother Desh Ratanji and my friend Manasvi has said that quid pro quo is one of the essential aspects. And it happens. This is not happening first time. Even it was happening when Nehruji was the Prime Minister. That time the people were asking that you support to the industrialists. Even in the Congress era, you remember 2000 to 2009, 2004 to 2008, the number of questions were asked that the government supporting the Ambanis. So that is what the question is, that when any financial support is being given to any political parties, is going to lead to any reciprocal agreements, per se, that policies which are being made only favoring the corporates, or those policies will also be in favor of the public at large. And if it is not in public at large, because if you're not a member, you're not telling that what amount of money you have received in the form of the electoral bond, it is not amenable to the common man, then of course it is raising questions about the integrity of the policy making, which is being influenced by the monetary contribution. And that is what I appreciate, that being the custodian of the Constitution, what Honorable Supreme Court has given today, the judgment, that is one of the best judgments which is going to have far-reaching. But supposingly if government wants to bring because this process is not going to work. This has been already, the Constitution bench has declared it unconstitutional. So bringing an ordinance on this topic, Uday, I tell you at that government will not do it. But bringing a clear legislation, because on the one hand, the argument was when we were talking about eradicating the black money, then this money receiving and not telling about the information, that is clearly a hindrance for making the country as a country of having the white money only. So that is why it is very much essential to have that the public should know. But it can also not be said that it is not 100%, it was not transparent. It was to some extent transparent also, because the agencies would, if tomorrow comes to the conclusion that something needs to be investigated, then that was amenable to the agencies. Agencies had a power, the right to know that what is the source of this information. But let's see, one of the best judgment which Supreme Court has passed today, and Supreme Court has raised concern over donations being made for quid pro purposes. And Supreme Court has also pointed out that the financial support to political parties would lead to reciprocal agreements. And that is why I raised the questions about the integrity of policy making. If you receive political funding, and it is not only the party in power, central government, it should not be taken that only BJPs will be benefited out of it. If you see the entire ratio in different states, different governments are there. And if the industries are working there, they have also given to those political parties. So it is not कि सब दूध के धुले हुए, कुछ न कुछ सबको गया है. And that is why Honorable Supreme Court, Honorable Justice Sanjeev Khanna, talking about the principle of proportionality, he described that this is the ratio, this is the amount which has given to this political party, and that is why you should publish it, that what amount have you received, and also stop this process with immediate effect. So let's see what happens tomorrow. But it is the fair, the very, very reasonable judgment, and which will...
Do you believe an ordinance could be in the offing, Desh Ratanji?
Moot question is that should this field be left unregulated? No, it should not be. Otherwise, what will happen? As I said, what happened prior to 2018, and therefore some kind of a regulation is required, a transparent regulation, as Supreme Court says. But as of now, it has dealt with the past. What about the present and future? How to deal with it? That's a moot question. And whether government will bring or not bring, I don't know, because it will be announced. The election can be announced anytime. Model code of conduct will come into the picture. Probably no. But the only way out before the election is an ordinance.
Okay, let me take that to Manasvi Thapar. Manasvi, your response. You've heard what Ashwini Dubey and Deshathri Nigam have outlined as the way forward. Which direction should we head in? Your response. Do you agree with them, or do you differ?
So there is a two-way answer to this. One could be a short-term answer looking into the Lok Sabha. One could be a long-term answer looking into the robust democracy of our country. The short-term could be they bring an ordinance which is not going to be right from the point of view of the BJP government itself. Why? Because when the Supreme Court says it's a wrong law, it's unconstitutional, you should not have it, and why you bring this law, that means you don't care about the Supreme Court. That's going to go wrong on the point of view of the BJP. Yes, it's unconstitutional. Accept it. Move on with the fact. Whichever government comes into power in 2024, you come into power in 2024. Think with the think tank. Think from the point of view of the people, of the democracy and the political parties. Yes, you need funding. You should not give away to us right to quid pro quo. That should not be the way. Right to andhadhun black money coming to the root of the white. That should not be the way. In this way, you create a law which is having a rightful path, a law which is reaching to rightful funding, a law which is transparent in electoral funding. That will take a longer time. That cannot be done. Aaj judgment aaya, kal ko hum bolde, let's create an ordinance overnight. We sit, all the advocate generals and attorney generals and the solicitor generals of the world sit together, all the legal minds come up, and then let's create a law.
Yes.
And at midnight it's passed as an ordinance. It will look bad on the government's part. Why? Because 140 crore people are waiting, watching after this particular judgment. It's a clear way that it's unconstitutional. Don't get into it. Don't get into creating any ordinance. Wait for it. You are anyways going to win elections. The opposition has its own problems. Create a good law. Create a good policy after you come into power.
All right. Well, clearly, of course, we will have to wait and watch how this story progresses. We'll keep a close eye on it.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.